The tiny white lion didn't run from the man. It begged him to follow, and what he found would change him forever. The small white lion stood in the middle of the dusty road, trembling, but it didn't run. It looked straight at the man, as if it had been waiting for him all along. When it cried, something inside him broke, because he knew this time walking away would cost more than he could bear. The small white lion didn't run. It stood in the middle of the dusty road, trembling, its pale fur catching the last light of the day. Caleb Whitaker hit the brakes hard, the Jeep skidding slightly before stopping. For a moment, he just sat there, staring. Wild animals always ran. This one didn't. Caleb slowly stepped out, boots pressing into the dry earth. The savannah stretched wide and quiet around him, the kind of silence that made a man feel like he didn't belong there. The cub looked at him, really looked, its eyes wide, unblinking, filled with something that didn't fit this place. Then it made a sound, soft, broken, not a roar, not even fear, a plea. Caleb felt it hit somewhere deeper than he expected. He crouched carefully, keeping his distance. "Easy," he said under his breath. The cub didn't back away. Instead, it took a few weak steps forward and pressed its tiny paws against his leg. Caleb could feel how light it was, how fragile. His jaw tightened. "Where's your mother?" he murmured. No answer, just wind in the grass. The cub turned suddenly and stumbled a few steps off the road. Then it stopped and looked back, waiting. Caleb didn't move. The cub cried again, louder this time, and took a few more steps into the tall grass before stopping once more, turning its head, eyes fixed on him. That was when he understood. It wasn't lost. It was leading him. Caleb exhaled slowly and glanced back at his Jeep, sitting alone on the empty road. He knew the rule. He had lived by it for years. Don't interfere. Nature takes care of itself. He had repeated that rule enough times to believe it, enough times to walk away when it mattered, enough times to lose something he could never get back. His fingers tightened slightly. The cub made a smaller sound now, weaker, as if it didn't have much time left to wait. Caleb looked at it again, at the way it stood there, too small, too tired, and still choosing to trust him. Something in his chest shifted. He reached back into the Jeep, grabbed his bag and canteen, then shut the door without thinking twice. When he turned around again, the road behind him didn't feel like safety anymore. It felt like escape. "All right," he said quietly. The cub lifted its head. Caleb stepped off the road and into the grass, the dry stalks brushing against his legs as the land slowly swallowed the last trace of where he had been. "All right," he said again, softer this time. "Show me." The grass closed in behind him, swallowing the road as if it had never existed. Caleb followed the small, white cub through the dry savannah, each step pushing him deeper into a place where the world felt older, quieter, and far less forgiving. The cub moved ahead in short bursts, run, stop, look back, always checking, always waiting, as if Caleb was the only thing keeping it going. At first, it seemed to know the way. Its small body slipped through the tall grass with urgency, driven by something instinctive. But the farther they went, the slower it became. Its steps grew uneven, its head lowered. The confidence it had on the road began to fade. Then it stopped. The cub circled once, twice. Its nose pressed to the ground, searching. A weak sound escaped it, thin, uncertain. It had lost the trail. Caleb stood still, watching. For a moment, neither of them moved. The wind brushed through the grass, carrying the dry scent of earth and heat. The sun hung lower now, turning everything gold and distant. The cub looked up at him, not leading anymore, asking. Caleb let out a quiet breath and crouched down. "All right, let me see." He scanned the ground slowly. Most would see nothing, just broken grass and dust. But Caleb had spent too many years reading the land to miss the details. A bent stem, a faint drag in the soil, a shape pressed into the earth, almost gone. Then he found it. A partial paw print, large, faded. But there. He stood and pointed ahead. This way. The cub hesitated for a second, then walked toward him. From that moment on, everything shifted. Now it followed him. They moved across an open stretch where the sun pressed harder against their backs. The heat drained strength with every step. Caleb could feel sweat running down his neck, soaking into his shirt. Behind him, the cub struggled to keep pace. It stumbled once. Then again. The second time, it almost didn't get up. Caleb stopped immediately. He knelt and poured a small amount of water into his palm. The cub licked weakly, barely enough to matter. Its breathing was shallow now, its body too light when Caleb lifted it again. "Stay with me," he muttered. Ahead, the land dipped slightly, and then he saw it. A river, wide, moving fast, dark against the fading light. Caleb slowed as he approached the bank. The current cut through the earth with quiet force, the surface shifting in ways that made it impossible to read fully. Near the edge, something broke the water for a split second, then vanished. He didn't need a second look. This crossing had a cost. He checked the ground near his feet. There it was again, the faint mark of a lioness's paw pressed into the mud at the edge of the river. She had come this way, which meant there was no other path. Caleb looked down at the cub in his arms. Its eyes were half closed now, but when he shifted, it stirred slightly, still holding on. He exhaled slowly. "No safe way," he said under his breath. "Just a fast one." The cub didn't move. Caleb adjusted his grip, holding it close against his chest, and stepped into the water. Cold hit first, then the current. It pushed hard against his legs, stronger than it looked. Each step had to be placed carefully, or the river would take it from him. The water climbed higher, knees, then thighs, pulling, dragging, testing. Caleb leaned forward and kept moving. Halfway across, something shifted behind him. A ripple. Fast. Closing. He didn't turn. He couldn't. He pushed forward, muscles tightening, boots slipping against stone beneath the surface. The cub pressed into him, silent, its small heartbeat rapid against his arm. "Almost there," he muttered. The far bank felt impossibly far away. Then suddenly, solid ground. Caleb stumbled forward, climbing out of the water and dropping to one knee in the grass, breathing hard. For a few seconds, he didn't move. Just stayed there, holding the cub, making sure both of them were still in one piece. Then he gently set it down. The cub tried to stand. Its legs gave out. Caleb caught it before it hit the ground. His jaw tightened. They didn't have much time left. He looked up. And that was when he saw them. High above the savannah, circling slowly in the fading sky. Vultures. More than a few, too many. Caleb stood slowly, his expression changing as he followed their movement across the horizon. "They've found something," he said quietly. He looked down at the cub, then back at the sky. "And I think we just did too." Caleb moved faster now, though every step felt heavier than the last. The vultures circled lower, their shadows drifting across the ground like slow warnings. The light was fading into a dull amber, stretching everything thin and uncertain. In his arms, the cub barely stirred. Its strength was almost gone. "Stay with me," he whispered, more to himself than to it. The land ahead turned rough. Dry brush thickened, twisted and sharp, forcing him to push through narrow gaps. Then the ground changed under his boots, subtle, wrong, too flat in one place, too hollow in another. Caleb stopped. The cub slipped from his arms as he lowered it carefully to the ground. It took 2 shaky steps forward, then let out a sound that cut straight through him. Not fear, recognition. Caleb followed its gaze. At first, he saw nothing. Then he saw the edges. A patch of earth, uneven in a way nature didn't make. Branches scattered too carefully. Dust laid too evenly. A trap. He moved forward slowly and dropped to one knee at the edge. The ground fell away beneath him. At the bottom of the pit, curled against the dirt wall, lay the lioness. Her body was still, her pale coat covered in dust, one leg bent at an unnatural angle beneath her. For a second, Caleb couldn't breathe. Then the cub cried again. The lioness's ear twitched, her eyes opened, alive. Caleb let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "You made it," he murmured, though he knew it wasn't over. Not even close. He grabbed his radio and tried for a signal. Static. He shifted position, raised it higher. "Come on! Come on!" A voice broke through, faint, unstable. Caleb spoke quickly, giving what details he could. The pit, the lioness, the urgency. The reply came back fractured. A team was on the way. But not close. Caleb lowered the radio slowly. Time wasn't on their side. The cub paced along the edge, crying softly, never taking its eyes off its mother. The lioness tried to move but couldn't lift herself. Caleb scanned the area and spotted a tree nearby, its roots deep and steady. He pulled the rope from his bag, tied it tightly around the trunk, and tested it twice. Then once more. He lowered himself into the pit. The dirt crumbled slightly beneath his boots as he descended. The lioness lifted her head, a weak, strained sound leaving her throat. It wasn't a threat. It was pain. "I know," Caleb said quietly. "I'm not here to hurt you." He crouched a short distance away, moving slowly, careful not to trigger panic. He poured water into his hand and placed it near her. She hesitated, then drank. Just a little. But enough. Above them, the cub watched, its small body pressed close to the edge. For a brief moment, everything felt still, then a sound. Low, sharp, wrong. Caleb froze. It came again. From the brush beyond the pit, a thin, unsettling call. He knew it. Not far. Not alone. Caleb grabbed the rope and climbed fast, hands burning as he pulled himself up. By the time he reached the top, shapes were already moving through the grass. Lean, quiet, patient, closing in. The cub stood near the edge, shaking. But it didn't run. Caleb stepped in front of it, instinct taking over. He had nothing. No weapon that mattered. No backup close enough. Just time slipping away. One of the animals moved closer, head low, eyes fixed. The circle tightened. Then, the cub stepped forward, past him. Caleb's breath caught. The small white lion planted itself between him and the approaching shapes. Its legs trembled. Its body looked ready to collapse at any second. But it didn't move back. It lifted its head and let out the strongest sound it could. It wasn't loud. It wasn't enough. But it was everything it had. Caleb stared at it, and something inside him broke open. All those years, all those moments he had stepped back instead of forward. Not this time. He moved beside the cub, not behind it. "I'm not leaving," he said, his voice low but steady. The shapes in the grass edged closer. Closer. The air tightened. Then, a distant roar cut through the silence. Not an animal, an engine. Caleb turned his head slightly, eyes narrowing. For a second, nothing else moved. Then light burst across the grass from beyond the ridge, and everything changed. The engines grew louder, tearing through the stillness like something the wild didn't recognize. Headlights burst over the rise, cutting through the dim amber of evening. The beams swept across the grass, breaking shadows, exposing movement. The shapes in the brush froze, then shifted. The moment had changed. The first vehicle rushed forward, tires grinding against the dry earth before stopping hard. Another followed behind it. Doors opened. Voices carried. Sharp. Controlled. Urgent. The circle around Caleb and the cub collapsed. One by one, the shapes in the grass disappeared, melting back into the dark, where instinct told them the hunt was no longer theirs. The tension that had held everything tight snapped all at once. Caleb didn't move for a second. Then the weight of it hit him. He lowered the cub carefully, his hand resting against its back, as if to make sure it was still there. Still breathing. Still fighting. The team moved quickly. Ropes were secured, lights repositioned. One man descended into the pit with steady precision, while others prepared a harness above. Caleb stepped back, silent now, watching. They worked without hesitation, lifting the lioness slowly from the trap that had nearly become her end. Dirt fell away from her body as she rose, her limbs weak but no longer trapped. When she reached the surface, she lay still for a moment, breathing, alive. The cub moved to her instantly, pressing close, its small body leaning into hers as if it had been holding that moment together all along. Caleb looked away briefly, drawing in a slow breath. It was over. But it didn't feel like an ending. Time passed. Not all at once, but enough to change things. Caleb found himself returning, not because he had to, but because something in him refused to stay away. The place where the lioness and her cub recovered was quiet, removed from the open land, but each time he came, it felt less like distance and more like something waiting. The cub recognized him. It always came closer, not rushing, not afraid, just certain, stronger now, steadier, no longer the fragile creature that had stood in the road. The lioness stayed back, watching. Her eyes followed him, calm and aware, as if she understood more than she needed to show. There was no fear in her gaze, and no forgiveness either. Just something honest. That was enough. The morning of their release arrived without ceremony. The sky stretched wide and clear, pale gold spreading slowly across the savannah. The gate opened quietly. The lioness stepped forward first. Her body had regained its strength, her movements smooth, controlled. The cub followed close beside her, no longer stumbling, no longer unsure. They walked into the open land. Free. After a few steps, the lioness stopped. Then she turned. Caleb stood still, not calling out, not stepping forward. He let the moment decide itself. She walked back to him. Slow, certain. When she reached him, she lowered her head and pressed it gently against his chest. Just once. No sound, no hesitation. But in that single moment, everything passed between them. Fear, trust, survival, choice. Then she stepped away. The cub lingered for a heartbeat longer, its pale eyes fixed on him. Then it turned and followed. They moved into the tall grass, their shapes fading into gold until the land took them back completely. Gone. Caleb remained where he was. The wind moved again, soft through the grass, the same as it had always been. Nothing about the world had changed, but he had. For years he had believed that some choices stayed with you forever, that once you walked away, there was no returning to who you could have been. He understood something different now. It wasn't about undoing the past. It was about what you chose, when it finally mattered. And this time, he had stayed. Sometimes courage isn't loud. It's the quiet choice to stay when walking away feels easier. This story reminds us that one small act of compassion can change a life, including our own. What do you think? Was it courage or redemption that guided him? Share your thoughts in the comments, like the video, and subscribe for more stories that stay with you long after they end.